Yo, what's up, guys? And today we're going to be reviewing the Denon SC3900. So, what is the SC3900? Is it a turntable? Is it a CDJ? Is it a MIDI controller? Is it a computer that plays CDs? I guess you could say it's all that shit. To be honest, keeping it real, man. It does all that shit. I mean, what else can you say? For those of you who were fans of 3700, I mean, when the 3900 came out, I'm sure you guys were fans of that too. But being the price point at $1,000 for just one unit, and then the rise of all-in-one controllers like the SX, it kind of got overshadowed, and therefore you really don't see them out, and not many people have them from what I can see. Off the top of my head, I can only name one person that has a pair of 37s. I don't know anybody else in my area who has a 39 or a pair of them. I was actually able to get my hands on one of these because I had traded some equipment, and it just worked out. Long story short, I traded up, I came up, and I'm happy.
Alright, so let's start off with the basic layout of the top of the unit. Starting to the top left, we have the USB flap where you're going to put your USB into. This is actually kind of a very sturdy flap. It's kind of actually hard to get into in the very beginning. A little annoying, but I guess that's a good thing because you know it's not going to accidentally pop open on you and cause any type of dust or liquids or whatever it may be to get in there. So you're nice and protected there. You have your USB eject. Excuse me, once again, I am sick, so if I sound weird and if I'm taking longer breaths than usual, I am super congested. But anyways, let's get back to this. So under that, you got your auto loop, minus and plus. Basically, you set an auto loop, you use the minus and plus buttons to make the auto loop bigger, make it smaller. You get the point. You have your A and B trim. Basically, what that's for, if you want to set a manual loop, or if you want to trim a loop, you could trim the beginning of it, or you could trim the end of it. Of course, you have your exit and re-loop right here. Under this, you have your 4 hotkeys. You have your clear, so you hold down the clear and delete one of the hotkeys if you don't want it there anymore. You have your MIDI bank too. Now, when this CDJ came out, Denon kind of got a good amount of flack because on their CD player there's no effects at all, and on most of all their other CD players you had effects. Now, Denon's response to that was basically, nowadays with DVS, most people are using CDJs for DVS or as MIDI controllers if they're capable of it. And nowadays, most mixers have, or a good amount of mixers have effects. So they really wanted to cut the bulk off it and make this straight up more than just a CD player. And they felt need be to go do away with the effects, and instead they added better hotkey buttons. And little features that I'm gonna get on through that. So yeah, under that you have your reverse if you want to listen to demonic messages. Right here it tells you what formats of music that this player can read. Under that you have your cue and your play button. Let me go ahead and turn this bad boy on so you could, let's see, yeah, there we go. I had to turn it on over here on the power switch. Yeah, so basically you can see it lights up real nice, whatever. Right now these are not illuminated because there's no CD in there, so let me go ahead and slide this back away so I can put I'll put this control CD I actually have, Serato CD, just to show you what it looks like as far as when they light up and whatnot. Now these buttons are actually an upgrade from the 37 itself, because the 37 had cue and play buttons that were very similar and mushy to these hotkey buttons, and Denon got a lot of gripes from a lot of people that would hit the edge of the button and it wouldn't play. I mean, they wouldn't hit it right, and I mean, if you're gonna hit it right, you gotta hit it right. So they went ahead and tossed those out and went with these tactile buttons, so you could hear every time I'm barely even pressing the corner and it's on point. You're not gonna miss that. You have your BPM sync, which you probably won't ever use unless you're going flash drives or straight CDs and you're linking these bad boys. Of course, you have your 9-inch platter. Show that spinning. Very strong platter. Very, very strong. I'm putting a good amount of pressure on the vinyl itself. Now, I don't recommend that you ever do this, only because stopping the platter and pushing it down hard enough where you could stop it is actually bad for the motor. If you do it enough times here and there, you could get away with it, but it's worth noting that it's not good for your player in general. Same thing with turntables. Top, you got your LCD screen. You can see I could switch with the scroll knobs as far as track 1 and track 2 on these throttle CDs. You only got 2 tracks, of course. Up top you have your CD, you have the USB, your link, and your MIDI. Now you press one of these, like searching for a USB. There's no USB, of course. You're linking, searching to link to another player, MIDI mode, whatnot. So let me go back to CD. Right here, of course, you got your scroll knob, nice and illuminated so you can see in the darkness. Up top, you got your disc ejector, which is illuminated, which is nice. You got your hot list. You have your back and forth right here to go through your library in the CD or the flash drive. You have your time display, single and continued, memo, utility. So you got all these buttons, right? And you might be thinking, yo, dude, what the fuck is all this for? Now, you got to think of this as a computer. These are basically like computers for the most part. So these are very advanced as far as the technology that goes in there. And all these buttons right here can help you out as far as firmware updates, changing certain settings in the player itself. Down here you got your shift and your lock. You have your dump feature. Now this is a nice feature that I'm really happy that they added. You have a start and stop time adjustment. So if you want the player to start off really slow, and I like that on the screen, it tells you how many percentage that you got it up. How many percentage that you got it up. I mean, I'm 100% on that, son. Anyways, it tells you right here the exact percentage, so you're exact, so you can really remember, like, okay, I had the start on 0.3 seconds, and it takes a little while longer. Now, if I want it a super long start, you can see the platter takes its time to start doing this thing, and that's basically what that's for. Me personally, I always keep the start time on point, especially with these CD players. That way I could just, you know, on beat, hit the play if I wanted to. Now on the stop, I always like to set it, like around like 0.3 or 0.5. It gives me that real turntable sound, the Right here you have your vinyl, aka if you press shift, this will be your torque adjustment. You can adjust the torque on these bad boys, higher or lower. Out the box, they're set up to be very similar to Techniques. Right here you have your pitch. Now the pitch does have a small click to it. Some people prefer it, some people don't. I personally like the pitch. Some people say you can't be extremely accurate if your pitch has a click. I feel like if you can't get past a tiny click, then what the fuck you doing? If a click and a pitch is really holding you back from accurate mix, then apparently your ears are not as good as they should be. You have your off right here if you want to turn this off for whatever reason, and you have your pitch range. Now on the pitch range, I wasn't completely happy with the pitch range, only because you have a plus or minus 6, plus or minus 10, plus or minus 16, and then a plus or minus 100. I mean, me personally, coming from turntables, I would have liked to see a plus or minus 8, a plus or minus 16, a plus or minus 25, and a plus or minus 50. I don't see anybody that's going to use plus or minus 100 unless you're doing some crazy wicked mixes. Me personally, I will never use that though. Plus or minus 16 maybe, but usually I find myself keeping it on plus or minus 10. So yeah, plus or minus 6, I mean, I don't know. It's just personal preference. You have your key adjust right here if you're rocking, you know, regular CDs and whatnot, or flash drives. And then you have your tap, and then you have your pitch bend plus and minus buttons right here. Let me go ahead and move this player up so you can see it just a tad bit more. You have your plus or minus buttons right here for your pitch bend. Now, I really enjoy these. I really got used to these on the V7s and the 3500s by Denon that I had. Basically, what it does is, say if you're playing and you're offbeat a little bit, you could adjust this. You could push it, and you could, you know, it basically emulates you pushing the platter forward or slowing it down with your finger, but you can do it with the button. That way you don't gotta mess with the platter. Yeah, I'm gonna flip it around and we'll go ahead and show you guys the back. Now you can see on the back, starting on the left hand side, we have your Kingston lock. So if you want to lock this bad boy. Right next to that you have your power on and off switch. It's a pretty firm switch. I mean, I'm putting a good amount of pressure on it and it's not turning on. I mean, you really do gotta press it in with a good amount of force in order to turn it on. So I mean, that's pretty nice. Right next to that you have your power AC in. Basically, what you see here is just a regular ACN connector for your power. Now, this loop right here to the right, it doesn't come like this out of the box. This loop is here for you could do this with your cable. Basically, you unscrew this screw right here, you put in your cable, and therefore it's harder for you to accidentally pull out your power cable and whatnot. So it's all personal preference. I only put it on here basically just for demonstration purposes only. To your top right, you have your link. So if you want to link two of these bad boys, then you have your USB-B. You're going to use that if you're going as far as MIDI and whatnot. If you're going to use this as a MIDI controller, see it says PC/MIDI, or Mac. This does work on Mac as well. For some reason, Denon just thinks everybody uses PCs. So therefore, they label anything that deals with computers PC. Right down here next to this power cable, you'll see fader, this little 1/8, this like headphone jack. It says fader. That's basically where your crossfader goes into. So you find these little tiny crossfaders and you make love with your Denon CDJ. I'm completely kidding. Don't think that there's like tiny crossfaders that you're supposed to buy for this. This is for fader start. Now, if your mixer doesn't have fader start, you're not going to be able to use this. And I could go into more detail about fader start in a whole nother video, but I'm pretty sure there's videos out there on YouTube already that can explain it a lot better than me, because personally I've never used it, but I have seen it been used. Then you have a digital out. Keep in mind, you will not be able to use a digital out unless your mixer has a digital input. A digital out is basically another output instead of RCAs. It looks like an RCA plug, basically is, but I mean, I don't know. To be honest, I'm not super huge into the cable, so I couldn't really tell you the difference. I'm pretty sure somebody watching this video will be able to tell you the difference in the comment section below, so go ahead and check out those comments. While you're out there, hey, shit, might as well leave a like. And off to the far right, of course, you have your line out, which is typical regular RCA out, and it was made in China, if you want to know. So build quality on this whole bad boy, like I said earlier, is built like a tank. You can see that has very sturdy feet. Very, very sturdy. And let me go ahead and just flip this up real quick so you can see the undercarriage of it. I mean, the undercarriage is, if you can see that, it's all steel and it's built to last. So this is definitely a good multimedia player, as I would call it, for every type of environment. Club, mobile, at-home use, and yeah.
So final thoughts. It's pretty fucking dope. To keep it real. It's dope, man. I like it. From somebody who's been using turntables for the majority of their career, to have something that has a very similar platter and a very similar feel, but in a smaller, compact version, is amazing. Now, some of you guys might say, well, why don't you just go out and find yourself some V7s, even though they don't make them anymore? You could probably find, a pretty good deal on eBay. And that is true. I've messed with V7s before, and I like them. I enjoy them. Smaller platter, though, but doesn't take away from its performance at all, in my opinion. But with this, if you're doing mobiles and you've been using turntables for so long, you just don't want to get a MIDI controller that doesn't have spinning platters, and the NS7 or the NS7 II is something that you're not really into, or there's something that you have a gripe about, you're going to spend more going this route, but you have a little bit more versatility, because you could use a USB drive, you could use a CD drive, if somebody so happens to need you to play something off one of those things. Not only that, you're also going to have to keep in mind that you're going to have to find yourself a mixer for this. Now, if you're video mixing, you're going to need you're not going to need a MIDI. Now, if you're video mixing, you're most likely going to want some type of mixer that has MIDI enabled. Now, I know Denon has mixers that has MIDI enabled, but they haven't really put out anything much in the future that probably strike your attention. So if you're going to go this route, you're definitely going to spend a good amount of money, being that each player is $900 to $1,000 for one. Keep in mind, you got to think about other all-in-one controllers that are going to be half the price of a pair of this, or at least, a quarter of the price lower than a pair of some of these. But the feel is what you're paying for. The quality is what you're paying for. And I'm not saying those other MIDI controllers are less quality and this and this and that. And yeah, they might be more portable if you're keeping these in single cases. But to each as their own. And if this is something that you've been looking at for a while, I completely back the Denon I completely back the Denon SC3900. Hands down. If I had 2 G's to buy a pair of CDJs, I would most likely go with some of these, knowing I do a good amount of clubs, and you guys might be like, well, dude, the club standards or CDJ 2000, yes. But as a home rig, as a home setup, these have USB. I can link these. I can also put together, Denon, I know, has their own software called Engine, exactly like Rekordbox. I mean, it gives me similar capabilities, so if I got on some Pioneers, I wouldn't be too far off. So that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you guys are in the market to get some, hey man, go for it. If it's not your thing, not your thing. It's all good, play. So I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Andy Mac, motherfucker.